My name is Richard Furrow, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm Cloud Hired.
I'm Cloud Hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm Cloud Hired.
So I'm Cloud Hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired. Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am Cloud Hired. Thank you, Mike and the GlowCloud team.
Welcome, everyone. This is Mike Gibbs, and we are here for our once a week cloud career question and answer session where if you've got questions on how to become a cloud architect or a solutions architect or an enterprise architect or an AI architect or a security architect, we're here to provide any kind of free help and assistance you can to give to you to get to your career. If you have other careers as well that you're interested in, I've been in this world now for well over 25 years. I've interviewed about 6,000 technology professionals. I've helped people get hired at Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, IBM, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, PNC Bank, security companies like Palo Alto and Zscaler and Netspoke. So I want to help you get to your goals. So that's why I'm here once a week. So bring us your questions and we'll answer them for free. Prior to getting to the questions, I want to tell you about some free things we have to help you in your career. So we're going to have a CCSK Cloud Security Boot Camp, and it's going to be starting next week. It'll be live where we'll be for about 3 hours per day, and we'll be going over the material. We'll be answering your questions, and please join us. It's completely free. And because the CCSK is a very basic intro level cloud security exam, I added a little extra for you to give you some of the additional things that you would need to know. So it should be a fun time. I love this. I've been in security, cybersecurity, cloud security, and networking and enterprise architecture for a couple of decades now. So join us. It's completely free. And also tomorrow, we're going to have a how to become a cloud architect webinar where we'll go over the cloud architect role, what we actually do versus what people think we do. We'll go over the exact skills you need to get hired in one of these roles, and then we'll spend time answering any questions you have on how to become an architect or architect skills. Are you ready? Your background, any questions you want. We'll do it all for free. So join us tomorrow on the free webinar. Now, at this point, bring us your career questions so we can do anything we can to help. Chris, I see there's already some questions, so please bring them in. What advice would you give someone that's unsure whether they are ready to take the leap into cloud architecture? So, Tuan Hughes, it's a great question. So what I'd be more concerned about is, what are you happy now? Are you fulfilled in receiving everything that you want now? And is cloud architecture the career that's going to truly make you happy? It's really those two things. Now, I can tell you from personal experience, I went to school for 7 years, had over $100,000 education to be a nurse practitioner practicing internal medicine. And I enjoyed the career, but I was so passionate about tech, I left technology after 7 years of school, after having my own internal medicine practice in Philadelphia, and then moved into tech because it was my dream. Do I regret it? No, it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. I traveled the world. I think I've been to every country in the world. I've met people all over the world. I've got to consult to the world's largest internet service providers, the world's largest banks, and healthcare organizations throughout the world. And I've loved every minute of it. But I love architecture. Now, what I'll tell you too, and Hughes, is if architecture is your dream, and I'm going to assume it is right now, then why would you wait another day? The average architect, an average cloud architect, earns approximately $1,000 a day, a little less for intro level architects, more for people like me that have been around in the world. It could be $2,000 a day. So why would you lose another day? If you think about it for 30 days, that's really losing about $20,000 of work, on a 5-day work week. Now, the second side of it is you've got to do what makes you happy. And if cloud architecture is what you want to do something that's going to make you happy. If it's something you love and want to do, go after it. Don't wait another day to go after your dreams. June Hughes, I learned a lot of lessons in my youth practicing internal medicine. I was a paramedic before that, so I got to see a lot of people on the last days of their lives. You know what a lot of them said to me? I wish I did this. I always wanted to be in healthcare like you, Mike, but I just didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the this. If it's your dream, go after that dream and don't wait another day if it's truly your dream. And if your dream is not cloud architecture, let's say your dream is practicing medicine. I encourage you, if you can apply directly to medical school, great. And if your goal was to be a physician and you need to go to college, pre-med first, or get a chemistry degree or biology degree first, and then go to medical school, I still encourage you. It is never too late. But I'll tell you, not doing what you love is the worst thing in the world. You should want to go to work each day. I say to my wife, I can't believe how privileged I've been. Early in my career, I got paid to talk to people and create architectures and strategies to help my clients do better. Later in my career, I teach other people how to be architects, and I get to manage to get people new jobs all over the world. And then again, it's a job that I love. So if it's a job you want and it's a job you love, I suggest you go after it immediately. Let's go to the next one. And please feel free to ask your questions.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So there was a disconnect between the platforms, so I'm going to have to read a question out to you.
Okay.
So the question is from Adarius on YouTube.
Okay.
Do you see there being...
Chris, hold on one second. So for everybody that's here, what happened is Chris, who's behind the scenes, is normally going to put the questions up. But unfortunately, there's a integration challenge going on. So Chris is going to read me the questions. And while he's reading me the questions, I'm going to announce the questions so you can all hear them, and then I will answer them.
Okay.
Is this...
They can hear me also, Mike. So the question is from Adarius. And the question is, do you see there being any demand or need for solution/enterprise architects to know Gen AI technology?
Okay, so the answer to that question is absolutely. There's a critical need for AI architects that specialize on AI architectures. In fact, we've got an AI architecture program that I collaborated with David Lithicum to create. And here's the reason. David Lithicum is a cloud computing expert and an AI expert. Now, admittedly, my first AI project was in 2001. David Lithicum was working in AI since 1985. His AI work in 1985 landed him at NASA before he took on all these major CEO, CTO, and strategy consulting and cloud and enterprise architecture roles. So he's an expert in that field. So yes, for AI architects, and we even have an AI architect program, and my team will drop a link of that in the chat box. Now, the second side of it is I don't see any enterprise architects that are going to be successful without understanding AI. Now, I'm not saying generative AI. I am saying AI. And whether the AI is generative AI, whether we're using agentic AI, whether we're using machine learning and deep learning and other forms of AI to analyze or parse through a large amount of information and analyze that information, whether we're using that AI to make recommendations or inferences or predictions, every enterprise architect needs to understand AI, and every cloud architect also needs to understand AI. And so that is absolutely definitely there. But there's plenty of room for specialty architects in generative AI, just like network architects focus on the network. And we've got a great program for them. We also have, when we train cloud architects and enterprise architects, give them the ability to add on just David's additional classes and modules, because we feel so strongly that anybody in today's world in a cloud architect space or an enterprise architect space is going to obviously need to know all the components of enterprise architecture, which are things like business process re-engineering and mapping out business architectures and creation of new business architectures with stakeholders, and then the leading of the architecture teams to baseline the environments, the creation of the architecture teams to create the new strategy, the ability to take those architecture teams and create initial architectures and go back to the stakeholders and get their feedback and information, and go back to your team and re-architect that, and then bring in your vendor solutions architect to help you fill in what some of those solution building blocks may be. And then when you're finally done with that, we've got to create a statement of where I can do all those architecture things. But AI is huge and security is huge. So I would recommend any enterprise architect or cloud architect to know a lot about those two things in addition to their primary field. But there's room for people that have pure expertise on just AI architecture. Hope that helps. And Chris from my team will either read off to you or bring in the next one. Okay, he was able to bring it in. Since solutions architects typically handle only one vendor solution, does Google, AWS, and others have enterprise architects? Yes. So here's the key. The solution architects are typically one part of the solution. So when I was a solutions architect at, say, Riverstone Networks, I was working on a single solution for them, which was IP multicast video solutions and any kind of IP multicast solution. Now, I was designing, presenting, selling Riverstone Network stuff because I was a Riverstone Solutions architect. But I might have brought in encoders from Tamberg, which is now Cisco. I may have needed middleware. I may have needed set-top box that were also part of the solutions. And we would also bring those vendors in as part of the solution. Now, that's different than the enterprise architect or the cloud architect that's going to be dealing with, say, a Nutanix cloud, that's also going to be dealing with AWS and Azure, that's going to do disaster recovery to a different cloud, for example, that's going to be managing, say, 1,000 different vendors that are going to be dealing with that. So the key is they're both different kinds of architectures, but all manufacturers, Microsoft, Cisco, IBM, they have a tremendous number of enterprise architects. And what they use us enterprise architects for is something different. We focus much more with the executives. We do many more executive briefings. We're building business councils with C-suite leadership. We're speaking at more industry conferences. We're writing more thought leadership documents. We're providing much serious consulting. So we'll be working on the billion-dollar architectures. We're going to be working on the architectures that will be getting press releases, hopefully, and joint press releases about this major company chose our solution because of why. So the enterprise architects are always in these companies. And while the difference is, a solutions architect may be at that just about manager level, the enterprise architect wouldn't be at the manager level. They usually wouldn't be at the senior manager level. They'd either be at the director level or the VP level at that company, often with much more substantial pay. So yes, the answer is that. And I've had both of these roles in those kinds of companies, solutions architects and also enterprise architects. They're all fun roles. Great question. Can a person with a disability work as a cloud architect? Absolutely. A person with a disability can do anything they want. I hate to say this because I hate to admit it, But about when I was 34 years old, I was involved in an injury that left me unable to walk for about 7 years. In addition to having that injury, I had been a power lifter and I had been an Olympic lifter. And I had 5 herniated discs, ligament tears in both shoulders, both labrals, ligament tears in both hips, and arthritis everywhere from martial arts and powerlifting. And, I was in physical therapy 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day. And years later, I'm still working. Now, it takes me 3 hours of physical therapy every single day to be okay. And right now, I'm actually speaking with my 4th neurosurgeon to try to figure out who can deal with my spinal stenosis so I can stand and walk a little further than I can right now. But the point is, I'm still here. I'm out there every day, and you can too. I spent most of my life as a healthy athlete. Right now, I deal with some challenges related to the crazy amount of athletic things that I did. And of course, with anything else, you can do your best you can. And there's always opportunities for people to work with abilities, with disabilities, and there's really nothing stopping you. I mean, if you really look at what people have done with disabilities, we've had people in the Olympics competing, people without disabilities. We find people at all levels of corporate things. We find wheelchair athletes that are absolutely amazing and people conquering amazing things every single day. Of course, a person with a physical disability can work as a cloud architect. I encourage you to. I'm dealing with wine right now. Hopefully after the surgery, it goes away. But the point is we all have challenges and we can all do many things. In fact, I knew a SEAL that used to say you can do 20 times more than you think you can. And you'd be surprised at how much you can do. Far, 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 far more than you ever thought. So go after your dreams. You want to be a cloud architect? Go after it. Don't let that disability sideline you. Prove your superpowers of all the other great things you can do, which I bet you are so many. Great question, Taw 30. Please believe in yourself and fight to be great, no matter what it is. Chris, we can bring in the next one. Do I still require 3 certifications for the AI Architect program? No. Now, why do I typically use certifications and where do I recommend certifications? Now, I want to be clear about this. Certifications are great for building your brand if they're relevant certifications. If the certifications are unrelated to your brand, they actually damage your brand. And Ta 3000, let me kind of explain it to you. If you walked into your doctor's office and what you saw was they went to a prestigious medical school, they did a prestigious residency, and they did a very prestigious fellowship. And on the wall, you saw them, photos of them speaking at major industry conferences. You saw them listed as top doctors. You'd be pretty comfortable in that office, right? I know I would, and I'm a medical professional with a license. Now, what if you walked into another doctor's office and instead of showing anything impressive about them or their history, they showed a picture of them flying an airplane, another picture of them fishing, and that they had a babysitting certification? Would you feel that same degree of confidence in that physician? Of course not. You'd be wondering what the heck they were spending their time on. It's probably not medicine. So we have to look at the relevance. As it stands right now, there are no real AI certifications. AWS has an AI practitioner. It doesn't dive anything into architecture at all. There's, for example, an AI machine learning certification that's more made for the hands-on engineers that are going to do it, but it doesn't teach AI. It's more about the AWS stuff. So there's really nothing we can give you in an AI certification that's meaningful in today's world. Now, we still want to do something, and you don't have to get any certifications. I've gotten plenty of people hired with no certifications. It's happened. But certifications can deeply help you get an interview. So I often recommend TOGAF in today's world, and I do that because at least it is an architecture certification. It doesn't teach architecture, but it teaches a process for digital transformation. So before you even determine if you're going to do it, determine what your goals are for the architecture, and then scope the architecture, for example, before you get there. And then the first thing you do is determine the vision and goals for the architecture. This would be TOGAF, for example. And then after that, you map out the business architecture and then determine what the future business architecture is. Of course, it doesn't tell you how to do these things. You have to be trained as an architect to know that. And then it would say, okay, look at your applications, your data, your technology, determine what they are, and then create your new data technology architecture based upon the new business architecture. And it's just a series of steps. So I do like TOGAF 1 for AI architects. And I still like one of those cloud provider certifications, like a AWS Solutions Architect Professional or an Azure Solutions Architect Expert, which again has nothing to do with this, but most people don't know that they aren't related to architecture. They're more related to systems administration, and they sound good. And if you have those two, that can help you get some interviews. But the reality is it's going to be much more about the knowledge you have. It's going to be much more about the things on your resume that are there that are going to be much more related to getting you those interviews. Now, if there's a point where there's a respectable and a reasonable AI certification that's out there, I'll recommend it. But as it stands for right now, there's just nothing out there. And I don't want to recommend busy work for people to do. I want them to focus on their highest value targets. And that could be developing the business acumen to be an architect, which can not only get you hired, but also increase your salary dramatically. So where do you focus your time and attention on from a training perspective, the thing that's going to give you the biggest results? So no, I don't really require any certifications, though I recommend. But no, there's no 3 certifications right now we could do for AI architecture, even if we wanted to. Great question, Top 3000. You're always looking for a competitive edge in life. Great, wonderful idea. And you got the idea from a content creator who helps people getting in engineering roles. Very helpful perspective. Thank you. You're more than welcome. You always need a competitive edge. And you know what, Iteris, I want you to do 2 things. The first thing I want you to do is find your superpower. And this is that one thing that you're so good at that it gives you an advantage in life. I don't care what it is, but the key is finding out what that thing is about you that's better than others, and then find a way how to exploit it. Now, Iteris, and I hope I got your name right and pronounced it right. If not, I apologize. I can look at myself and I know what I'm really good at, and I know what I'm not really good at. But one of the things I knew early in life is I could do 2 things. I could manage to look at an incredible amount of information, learn it, and retain it incredibly quickly. And I had the ability to explain things and communicate well. Now, I knew those 2 things about me, Iteris. And when I looked at that, I said, well, architecture is going to be right for me. Engineering's not going to be right for me. Because in architecture, it's about creating a strategy. It's about creating a blueprint. It's about looking into a lot of things, gathering a lot of details, and creating a strategic plan. And I looked at that and said, wow, this is perfect for me. By comparison, if it was engineering, I would have had to be troubleshooting things, and I might have had to be coding things, and I might have had to be configuring things, and I might have had to sit behind a desk for hours at a time, staring at a computer screen in front of me. And my brain just doesn't operate that way. And I know that about me. So what I want you to do is figure out what you're good at. Maybe you can give presentations. You know what? In a technology career, like an architecture career, if you're a great presentation giver, that can be an extra $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. You'd be earning more than the competition. Maybe your ability is to walk in, elicit information, and then be able to sell. And be able to sell technology. And I know sales reps earning $800,000 a year. So I want you to figure out what's that one good thing about you. And I know you got a lot of good things about you. But what was it growing up? What was it throughout your life? That one thing that you did differently better than everybody else. You find that. That's your competitive advantage. Find a way to create value in that. Find a way to tie it to a job that you'll be great. And the things that you'll be able to achieve are incredible. Please keep asking questions. I love these questions you're asking. I really do. Chris, let's bring in the next one. The pain. How does one go about studying how to maintain multi-cloud networks without working for a company that already does as such? Most job ads want people experience with that. So the pain, and I love that beautiful catch you have there in your diagram. you have to remember that there's two ways you can do your training. And I'm going to tell you how to do it the right way and how your life is going to be simple forever and you can do anything you want forever. And I'm going to tell you the hard way, which is sadly what most people do. If you actually learn the cloud, and you can't learn the cloud by getting AWS certified, Azure certified, or Google certified. All you'll get is the cloud provider abstracted all the technology you need to know about, and they made up silly, ridiculous marketing names for things, and then they teach you how to configure it, which has absolutely nothing to do with architect. So instead of teaching you what is a virtual machine, how do virtual machines work, what is the hypervisor on a virtual machine, let's talk about the CPU and the DRAM and the processor architecture about a virtual machine, the type of networking that would go into that virtual machine, either software-based networking or hardware-based networking. Could you push a GPU in the machine for AI? So instead of the certifications teaching that, and if you understood that, you would know every virtual machine in the world. And that's what I teach to our students. Then it wouldn't matter if it was an AWS EC2 instance, which is a virtual machine, if it was an Azure virtual machine, if it was a Google Compute Engine instance or an Oracle virtual machine, because it's identical technology and it's the same technology we had. And if one learned when to use object storage and how object storage works and where object storage fits into the entire architecture, then guess what? It doesn't matter if it's AWS S3, Azure Blob, or Google Cloud Storage, or the object storage in your data center. That's what we're looking for, is the real knowledge. You know, if you know what you're doing, it's nothing. For example, I did the CCIE, which is my favorite intro to networking. And the week later, when I passed that exam, the next thing I realized, all the networking gear I was working with was Juniper and Extreme Networks, and almost no Cisco. But it didn't matter because it was the same BGP than the Cisco CCI that Juniper would have had. It was the same OSPF that Cisco taught me on every other router. So I want you to actually do that. Now, I also want you to understand that there's no such thing as a job description. Nobody really cares about your experience. They care about your competency. And how do we determine your competency? We determine your competency on the interview. Now, I'm going to do two things for you. One is I'm going to actually tell you what the word experience really means, and I'm going to give you some secrets, and then I'm going to talk to you more about how to learn it. No one cares about your experience. They care about your ability to do the job and the ability to do it well, which is why people like Ivan Tamba, for example, was hired by AWS as a solutions architect with no tech background other than our training, just like, for example, Coyote, who was a good friend of his that also got hired by AWS, also attended our training. Or Jennifer E., who got hired by JP Morgan Chase as a solutions architect. That was her first tech job. She came from a mental health background. Or Wallace, who was a sales rep, who was hired by JP Morgan Chase as an enterprise architect. So you can easily get hired without the experience if you've got the competency. Now, let me tell you where the experience on the interviews comes from. And I'll tell you how I learned it. So back in 1999 or 2000, I was in my first network engineering. Actually, I was a network architect at the time job. And my manager had me interview quite a few people. And I interviewed the first person. It was the first time I ever interviewed someone. And the person came in for a network engineering position. And I asked them a simple network engineering question. And the person had the knowledge of this area all over the resume. I asked this person a simple question and they literally made stuff up. They just lied to me. So I said, well, okay, that's fine. Let me ask you about this. They said they knew about OSPF. So I asked them about the type of LSAs that existed in OSPF and what they did. And then the person started making stuff up. So I said, okay, you don't know OSPF. Now, what is it that you really know? And the person said, I really know BGP. So I said, please describe the BGP finite state machine. And the person asked me what was a finite state machine. And I shook the person's hand and I said, thank you very much. Unfortunately, you don't know networking. And obviously, we can't hire you for networking since you don't know networking. But come back when you learn networking and then maybe we can hire you. So I took the person out of the building. And about 5 minutes later, my manager comes over to me and he says, I was checking to see how the interview was going. And I said, the interview went so badly, the person didn't know networking. So I told them to come back when they didn't know networking. And I escorted them out of the building. And my manager says, no, Mike, here's the thing. When you interview someone, we can't tell them why we can't hire them. That opens us up to liabilities. Plus, the people are going to get angry and upset. Here's what you do. The next time a person lied on their resume and is completely incompetent, just tell them, I'm impressed with all your background, but I'm sorry, you need experience. Now, that is a lie that every single manager has been taught to deliver throughout their life, to not tell people the real reason they're not hiring. But if you have the skills to get the job, you can get the job. Sorry, managers had to get rid of our secrets so everybody knew better, so they can have a better life. So there is that. Now, if I ask you a competency question, how you answer that will determine whether I'm ready to hire you or I think you're capable. Now, here's the type of question that I might ask someone to determine their level of competency. Let's say I have a person that wants to be a security engineer, or a person that's applying to be a security architect. And on their resume, they've got 1,000,001 little projects that they've done, but that has no reason bearing on whether I'm going to hire them. I'm going to hire them by what they know. And I might ask someone applying for a security engineer or a security architect role, could you tell me the difference in the type of encryption and the type of security that are provided via IPsec in tunnel mode versus TLS-based security? And the reason I ask that question is that gives me a lot of information if the person knows. So for example, if the person said, if we use IPsec, specifically speaking in tunnel mode, it encrypts the entire packet, meaning the IP header and the payload. So IPsec will provide encryption of the packet the entire way. So no one will know who sent data to whom or what data was actually spent. By comparison, if we had a TLS-based security, it doesn't encrypt the header of the IP packet, it only encrypts the payload. Therefore, with TLS security, if Mike and Sam are talking, you'll still know with TLS security that Mike and Sam are talking. You just won't know what Mike and Sam are talking about because the payload is encrypted. Now, that kind of an answer shows me that the person understands the types of encryption technologies that are used for VPNs. They understand the IP packet, they understand internet protocol, and they can also understand the impact of encrypting only the payload versus the payload plus the headers. And that gives me a lot of context. Now, I know if that person knows that, the pain, guess what? It doesn't matter if they're using AWS, Azure, Google, Nutanix, OpenStack, or VMware. They can work anywhere because they understand the fundamentals. So that's the key. Just learn the cloud. What is the cloud? The cloud is a data center. And I am literally not joking. It is just a data center that you're renting space in. And this is where the people actually have the biggest problem. I may actually have something on my desktop that I was actually drawing for the free CCSK training that we're going to be doing soon, which please sign up for. And if I still have this diagram handy, I'll actually use it to show you what I actually mean. And if not, we'll go back to the content. But if I have it available to you, I actually wanted to show it to you. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to whiteboard it out for you because I think this will help everyone that's here figure out how they can understand multi-cloud better. So I'm going to just share this. So let's just play with this for a minute. So in this particular environment, what we have my desktop. We're going to design an actual cloud. Actually, we'll design a data center first, and then I'll show you what is a cloud. So what are we going to have in a cloud? Well, the first thing we're going to need is we're going to have power coming in, right? So we're going to have power. And we're typically, whenever possible, we're going to have 2 power companies because we need some redundancy. We'll typically have redundancy in our power transformers, for example. Now, we're also going to need generators for backup. So we'll typically have some generators, and we'll also have some UPS systems, which are batteries. And we're going to have both of them. Typically, the batteries, the UPSs actually provide power until the generator kicks in if there's an outage. Now, we're also going to have HVAC. So we're going to have a bunch of ACs in a redundant environment to keep our systems cool. And I'll show you the difference between a standard data center and a cloud. And when you see it, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. So this is typically what we see. And this is the infrastructure coming in. Now, we're also going to have connections to the outside world. So we're going to have routers that are going to connect us to the outside world to something called intranet. And that's going to be our internal systems, maybe in other locations if we own multiple environments. And we're going to also have routers that are going to connect us to the internet. That's the internet everybody else has used, the public environment. So we're going to have net routers and switches and wide area network providers coming in with connections coming into the building. In addition to this cloud, we're going to have a whole bunch of routers and switches. And I'm going to make it look really easy. And I'm just going to call it routers and switches here. And we're going to have our routed switches. Now we're going to have servers. And we're going to have a lot of servers in this environment. And where do you think the servers are going to be plugged into? These switches. So we're going to have a lot of these things, potentially thousands of these in any data center or cloud environment, but we're just going to draw a few. Bear with me for a second. And then what are we going to also do? We're going to have various storage networks. And what are these systems really going to be? I'll show you. Whoops, what just happened there? Where is these systems going to be? Let me get rid of the fill and I can show you what's going to be in these storage systems. And there's very many manufacturers. So what you're going to see, it's going to be a box. It'll have some processors in it, and it's going to have a whole lot of hard drives in a RAID environment, redundant array of inexpensive disks. So we can add a lot of capacity, get some speed and performance. And of course, where are these things going to be connected to? They're going to have high-speed connections to the network. So this is typically what we get. Now, we will have physical load balancers that distribute between servers. And then what's going to happen to this typical environment is we're going to have some form of virtualization control plane. So let's say you go to Nutanix and you get this for your data center, which is a great private cloud provider. Now you've got this entire cloud, and now you've got all the services available on AWS, Azure, Google. And what kind of services am I talking about? We can create virtual machines. And where are the virtual machines going to be coming from? You'll go to create a virtual machine. It'll hit the control plane. And the control plane will say, well, we've got all these available servers. Put your virtual machine on this physical server. And then the control plane knows to remove that compute capacity from the capacity of the environment. You want to run some containers? The control plane determines where your containers are going to be. Your control plane would typically have your Kubernetes, which is going to be what's actually controlling your containers. And all your containers are all going to be hosted on, guess what? Virtual machines, which are going to be sitting on those servers. And your Kubernetes control plane is also going to be typically sitting on various virtual machines in your data center. Now, you create a virtual machine. What kind of storage is it going to use? It's going to use block storage, which is going to come from your storage area network, just like it would in any cloud. Now you want to run a function as a service, like a Lambda function, where they tell you it's serverless. It's not serverless in any data center. The Lambda function hits the control plane. The control plane says, oh, this available server has compute capacity, send it here. So this would be a private cloud. Now, when it turned this into a public cloud, sure. Now let's AWS. Now AWS has this identical infrastructure. AWS has their own control plane. So now when you need a virtual machine, you go to the AWS Management Console and click on the virtual machine you want, and it runs on one of their servers. Same thing for absolutely everything. So if you learn the network in the data center, you know all clouds. And that way you can go on an interview and you can answer questions at such a level of depth, they're going to hire you because they know you're capable. Hope that answered your question. Hi, Mike. You've been recruited for security architect roles, but you want higher quality opportunities. What is the best way to connect? So, Dingelman, I know you, and let's be realistic. You are incredibly intelligent. And I'm giving you this real feedback because you didn't provide your real name here. But you've got 1 year of experience as a security engineer. You're trained to be a security architect, but it's your first time. So you're not going to get the best security architecture things right now. I'll tell you right now that I think you're about 75% ready for a job. And I think by the time you're 100% ready for one of these jobs, you're going to be getting much better offers, because between now and then, you'll know how to create the right content. You'll know about the kind of things to discuss, and you'll be able to create that documentation and things that shows how you're really ready for the job. So the fact that you're getting all these good interviews and people are already reaching out to you, and I think you're only 75% ready for the job, that's great. But if I was you, I'd wait 2 or 3 months. I'd master the skills that are really needed to be great at the career. And then I'd be in a position where I could actually recruit out to the actual recruiters and start showing them things so then you can get to your goals. Because if you go on these better interviews right now, I don't think you're going to be successful. So I don't want you to waste them now. I really don't. I want you to really go out there when you're ready. So that'd be my best advice for you. And I wouldn't have said that if you used your primary name, but I think so highly of you. And I have so much respect for you. But I think you need to be a little more ready before you go out there. And I think that's going to solve all your problems. Chris, if you can bring in the next one. How has the current economic downturn impacted the job market for enterprise architects? Best advice on a year-long gap to your layoff. So could you point me to negative quarters of negative GDP? So what are we dealing with tech market job-wise right now? What are we dealing with the economy as well? We're dealing with a whole lot of economic uncertainty, which is incredibly scary, and it actually impacts hiring. We're also dealing with the leftover flu from work from home. And what I mean by that is some people have worked from home and have delivered incredible performance for their companies. But many companies right now are struggling from productivity out of the current employees. And until they get current employees, they're not able to actually hire. So, Rob, I think there's a lot of things going on right now. I will tell you this. Architects are getting hired all the time. As people in any kind of sales positions, like sales engineers, are getting hired all the time. And I want you to look at what you're seeing. You're seeing a realignment in the market. And we actually talked about this realignment and what it was actually going to be a couple of years ago on our channel. If you go to our webpage, you'll see all the places that I've been published. And I talked about migrating now and for the foreseeable future to any of these roles where you have to be human to human, like an enterprise architect. And what you'll see is a company like Cisco does a layoff. And then you'll see 3 weeks later, they hire a whole bunch of sales engineers and solutions architects and all these people in sales. You'll see it again and again. IBM did a layoff and they said, well, AI has enabled us to get rid of these people, but customer-facing roles, there's that. So there's an incredible amount of opportunity right now for architects. Is the market strong? No, but there still is the opportunity if you're out there. So a year-long gap in a resume, you probably want to explain it. But if you've been out for a year, here's what I need you to think about. Now, I can tell you that if someone is prepared properly for the job, they shouldn't have to interview with more than 3 companies to be hired. And I can tell you, for example, I had previously told someone they're almost ready, but not completely ready. When that person's ready for that job and he walks into that interview, or she walks into that interview, because I don't want you to tell you who they are. If that manager sees that person as good, they're going to scoop them up. For example, Emmanuel was a student of ours that just got scooped up. He left the interview and I had a call on the way back. And it's a very recent situation. I've had a lot of people recently get hired in recent weeks, but I don't think the economy is still good. I really don't. I think there's all kinds of things, and I think there's all kinds of transitions, and that stuff is scary. What I would do is I would want to show what I did in this 1 year. I really would want to be able to show it. And I would want to show some form of development, something that you got better at while you were there. Did you do leadership training? And can you prove it by showing better leadership skills on there? Did you develop your sales skills so that when you walk in there on an interview, prove to them how good you can sell? Because that'll obviously do things. Did you increase your technical acumen or in your business acumen? Did you take certificates in something? Did you develop something? What is it you've actually done? So I'd want to be able to talk about that. And if you can show that you developed yourself a lot in this time, well, that's not wasted time at all. And that looks good. And I've had plenty of people that I hired after a couple-year break. Balwinder was a student of ours. She had a engineering background and was a stay-at-home mom for like 9 or 10 years. She spent a year with us where we cross-trained her to be an architect, and then Microsoft hired her as a cloud solutions architect, despite having many years off. Almost joined another company as a distinguished architect right around the time that I actually started this company, but I chose not to actually accept the offer. And I had a many-year gap because I wasn't able to work because I had been injured and had to spend many years in school. And what I was doing is training people for fun on the side and coaching people for fun on the side just because I loved it so much. And again, you can get past it. So I'd want to be prepared to talk about what you did. And I would do a serious, honest assessment of myself. Have you gone on interviews, and if they're going well, and you're and you know they're going great? But if they're not going well, I'd really want to start looking, at me. Have I refreshed my skills in a while? Because sometimes it's easy to be on a job a lot and then focus on one or two things, even though we're supposed to focus on a lot of things, and then forget certain things and then have to redo it. So I've had to do that for people as well, especially people that have had good jobs. They got big promotions. They got promoted into something big. They stayed there for 15, 20 years, and then COVID happened. And there were large people that were laid off. So things like that are there. So you'll be able to get a job as an enterprise architect. Companies are struggling. They spend lots of money in technology, and 70 to 80% of the time, they're not getting there. Now, I wouldn't want to be getting a job as a software developer. I wouldn't want to be focused on an engineering role. Companies are trying to figure out how much they can do with AI and how many engineers they can go. So that's a little scary. But any kind of cloud architect, AI architect, security architect, or enterprise architect, you should be good to go. Of course, outside of business acumen, what's taught to members at Globe Cloud? Is there an MBA program, or do you believe an MBA program adds value? So you have access to a few community colleges, Houston, University of Houston, and most notably Rice University. So I'll tell you what we do. So we actually, as architects, what we have to do is both. We have to have business skills, and we also have to have, what's the word I'm looking at? The technology skills that are relevant for our careers. So for example, let me give you an example of what we're actually talking about. So if I'm going to hire let's say a security architect, the security architect is going to have a combination of a set of skills, and we teach all of them. So if I'm going to hire a security architect, I need someone that has what's called CXO relevancy. And I'll tell you, after my MBA, and I do recommend an MBA for architecture careers, but after my MBA, I still needed to take extreme training on CXO relevancy. The amount of training was about half the cost of a modern car. Now, we also teach business acumen, which are the kind of things you need to understand about business. What is business architecture? How does business architecture work? How would you build an ROI model? How do you build a business case? How do you calculate the opportunity and the opportunity's value, because a business can spend its money in one place, so to speak? How to determine whether it's better for an organization to finance equipment versus in a capital expense manner, or lease the equipment in an operational expense manner versus using the cloud and rent something, for example. So and as architects, we're going to be leading teams. So because we're going to be leading teams, we're going to need strong leadership skills, which we teach those, and they're not taught in MBA programs. You're going to have to learn how to manage stakeholders, and that's not taught in MBA programs, so we teach it. As an architect, you're going to have to sell. So we teach our architects how to sell and be good at it. Architects get requirements, they communicate requirements, and they're constantly writing things. So we teach all of our architects how to communicate like an executive. We teach all of our architects how to give a presentation. Why? Because as an architect, you give presentations every day. And more importantly, the last interview for an architect is going to be a presentation. Now, here's where I needed training, which was probably as expensive as a full car. And that's called executive presence. And executive presence is the ability to walk in and command the room. And every security architect needs that. So we would teach it. Now, a security architect needs to be able to manage vendors. So of course we teach vendor management. A security architect needs to be emotionally intelligent. So we use a lot of types of emotional intelligence training and self-control and mindfulness training. And of course we teach our students how to negotiate. Because like that, our architects are going to be dealing with it. But what's the other side of what security architects need to understand? Well, they need to understand how to create a security policy, create incident response procedures, create disaster recovery planning. They need to understand risk management, things like identifying and classifying assets, assessing risk, prioritizing risks, designing the controls, developing incident response plans. They need to understand network security and things that go into along with that, like access, like packet filters, network access control, network segmentation and micro segmentation, traffic shaping, policing, even encryption. A security architect might need to know data security and data classification and controlling access and data loss prevention. A security architect would need to know about application security, things like code checks and input validation. A security architect would need to understand IAM, like federated IAM and single sign-on and cloud access security brokers and context-aware IAM, and the strengths and weaknesses of the various types of authentication messages. A security architect would need to understand physical security, when to use fences, guards, dogs, have you. A security architect would need to understand cryptography and digital signatures and public key cryptography and security frameworks like NIST and Zero Trust. So, we have to teach all of that in our programs because that's why we get people hired. So while everybody else covers, 2% of it, we train everything. Now, Icarus, if you're asking about our tech leadership program or our lead architect programs, well, that's another story. They basically have all of these things we're talking about with interview coaching, as well as an additional business acumen plan that was created by 3 MBAs and 2 PhD business school professors that were both deans of business schools. And that's our executive training on top of it. So everything we do is designed to give our students a significant competitive edge over everyone else. And that's why one day we had a VP of one of the cloud companies comes to class and he tells why he wants to hire so many of them. Or another day we had a director at AWS come to class and talked about why he loved our people. So keep that in the back of mind. Those are the kinds of things we cover. And thanks for the question. I always love talking about our things, but I don't normally do it unless people ask. Will the inability to travel extensively limit the potential of a cloud architect? If you didn't have a disability, the answer would be yes. If you do have a disability, companies have to make reasonable accommodations for you, which can include having higher definition video conferencing capabilities like Cisco telepresence in your home, or the ability to have to fly only first class, for example. And the company would necessarily pay for things like that. So kind of keep this in the back of your mind. But no, nobody can penalize you for having a disability. Chris, let's go to the next question. Hi, Mike. In your company, you have a colleague who is a data center solutions architect, but he is involved in configuration and automation. That means he's not doing any architecture. He's a data center engineer, but they decided to give him some additional pay and found a way to do it. And I can tell you, you'll see a lot of people they do this for. So, for example, there was at one point a company that hired me. It was in 2003. It was in 2002. And I had 2 really good job offers at the time. One was to be a principal architect at Comcast to design their backbone. And there was another one that gave me more money than I could possibly ever have dreamed of at the time. So I took the job at the company that was going to pay me more money than I could thought. And I walked in on my first day, and the person that hired me said, "Oh, Mike, just to tell you, we're going to want you to do some sales engineering things here, like doing proof of concept. You might have to do some troubleshooting and fixing the technology." And I said, "Why did you hire an architect?" They said, "Mike, we never wanted an architect. We wanted an engineer, but we couldn't figure out how to pay an engineer as much money as you were worth." So they made it up. But no, the second somebody touches the technology, they can't possibly do architecture, because if that person is doing configuration and automation, you know what they're not paying attention to? They're not paying attention to the network. And if they're not paying attention to paying attention to configuration, they're not able to see what's going on with that storage infrastructure. I mean, sure, they'll be able to see what's in front of it, but they're not going to understand the spikes. They're not going to understand where they need capacity planning. And if they're doing that, they're not going to be able to figure out, what kind of maintenance do our hypervisors need, and when can we deploy these maintenances? And if they're focused on this, they're not going to be thinking of, wow, we've got 2,000 network load balancers and application load balancers here, and they all need to be patched. What people are going to do that? Who can test the patches and where we can do that? And if that person's worrying about configuration and automation, they're not talking to stakeholders across the business. They're not presenting solutions. They're not doing any architecture. And that's the thing. So there's a lot of jobs that say architect that have nothing to do with architect. But I can tell you what, your friend isn't earning architect pay most likely either. And I can tell you, I've taken people that have these jobs that are like, Mike, I'm an architect. I'm like, wait, you're not. We're going to teach you how to be an architect. And after 3 or 4 months, they're like, oh, I wasn't doing any architecture. And I know. I'm like, because you can't do two things at once. And then they left my program. For example, I had somebody that had a $150,000 solution architect job that was engineering. And he left my program with a $409,000, a real architect job over at Google. So big difference between the things. We don't get to touch the technology. And to be fair, that's someone telling you that you're basing off of someone's experience in a company, and it's not going to be most likely. I will tell you the people that I'm referring to are the people that are working at Cisco and Google and AWS and Azure and Microsoft, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, Zscaler, or Palo Alto, those kind of companies. They're not some other things, the companies that pay the most. Chris, let's go to the next question. Do I have any recommendations for certification course topics covering overview of storage systems that is not vendor specific? Not really. I would encourage you to realistically get information from quite a few. Now, I would tell you that Dell EMC does have a lot of good documentation on storage area networks. I would look at companies like IBM. They have a lot of information on storage. I would start looking a little bit about some of the NVMe and SSD-based storage companies and kind of see what their offerings are. And I would look more into that. And the key here is, why am I saying, and then I would also read acceptable storage documentation that's actually out there. And if it was something like networking, I could give you something that's really good and clear. If it was something like security, I could give you something good. Like the CISSP is the best intro to security certification in the world that's out there. It serves as a framework for all the other things you're going to need to learn, and it's great. But storage, I don't really know any good storage certifications that I can recommend, but I would recommend learning about file storage, object storage, and block storage. I would recommend learning a lot about RAID and the types of RAID and when you would use them. I would recommend about learning the different types of hard drives that exist. For example, when you use a magnetic drive, a SAS drive versus a SATA drive, and those limitations, I would look at a SAS versus SATA as it pertains to standard SSDs. I would look at the various NVMe and PCI interfaces and the type of performance that could be delivered in terms of throughput and IOPS. And then I would think of how I would put those things together. So I kind of hope that totally makes sense. With that, you'll have good security knowledges. And that's how I learned security. Great question, Chris. Let's go to the next one. If you've got a question, please bring them in. We'd love to answer them. If you're a cloud architect with data analysis knowledge, what do you need to study in depth to be involved in AI projects? So if you are a cloud architect and you're actually doing cloud architecture, and I want to baseline what cloud architecture is, because, and I'll use the CIO magazine's definition of a cloud architect when I actually describe what I mean by a cloud architect. So if you are working as a cloud architect where you're interacting with the C-suite and you're learning the vision and goals for your client's business, and you are then working with key stakeholders and the leadership to map out and understand the business architecture of the building, not only things like the org chart, but key business processes and the value streams that makes that a more competitive business. And if what you're doing as a cloud architect is then you're leading a team of people to actually go and evaluate the organization's technology, like an enterprise's technology, because they probably have 1,000 or 100 different applications and a couple 100,000 IP addresses in use. They're using a couple of clouds and things like that. So if you're dealing with that and leading that team to baseline it, and then leading another team of people to create the architecture strategy, if you're then used to taking that strategies to key stakeholders across business units of that organization, and then taking that back to your architecture team, if you're then used to going out there and being able to create a governance structure and create change control structures for that, and if you're used to selling the vision and giving the presentations to the C-suite and the board, and that's my definition of people working as a cloud architect, then if your knowledge is really AI, then you just have to add the AI, the additional AI skills to what you're really looking at, and you'll do well. So what are those kinds of skills? So it's going to be less about data analysis per se, and it's going to be your knowledge of first, the network, the data center, your compute, your storage, your databases, and all the underlying stuff. And then it's going to be related to understanding your databases and training data, understanding the various types of inference engines you have, understanding how you would build an AI model and how you would tune an AI model and how you would test an AI model and the type of AI operations that would use, and knowing how and where to use the different types of AI. For example, when would you use a small language model versus a large language model? When would you use generative AI versus using traditional AI? When would you use an AI agent to solve what business problem? You have those skills that we're talking about, you'll have any kind of cloud architect or even AI architect job you want for at an amount of at any kind of pay that you're typically looking for. So that would be what I would do. So it's not whether you've done the work before, it's can you do this? Can you design this? Can you provide a real business outcome and show some form of business optimization? There's such a critical shortage like that. You'll be hard like that in that field if that's what you need to know. But it's not the analysis knowledge, that's the engineering, it's the design. Idris, not sure if you're hearing the term correctly, but what is CXO relevancy? So, and this is a term that's widely used in all executive positions throughout the biggest companies. So when we interact with the C-suite of an organization, we have to communicate to them and things that they care about. For example, a CEO of a business is focused on the organization's corporate strategy. It's focused on making sure the business meets its revenue targets 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, but we're also focused at where the business is going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 20 years from now. So if an architect comes into our office and they start talking to me about AWS S3, I'm going to push this button and security is going to escort them out of the room, because the average CEO's time is $15,000 an hour, how much they would lose by not doing what they would normally do. And they don't want to hear somebody talk about engineering stuff. Now, by comparison, if I walked into the CEO's room and I was able to talk to them about their 15.7% compound annual growth rate and how we need to make changes in their network to prepare that network for the growth that they're trying to achieve, and tell them if we don't do this, what will be the impact to their business? And if we do this, what additional revenues that business can do by offering new services. Now I'm a hero. So we have to communicate to things that people care about. The CEO is focused on the strategy. You'll have to get the CFO to pay for your architecture. I closed a $1.1 billion architecture in my architecture career. And you're going to have to convince the company there's business value in that. So you're going to have to build business cases. The company may have to finance that. And for that, you're going to need the chief financial officer. And you're going to have to speak the same language as the chief financial officer. And that's what's called CXO relevance. And companies like Cisco and other leading companies, they'll spend $10,000, $20,000 or more training their employees to be good at CXO relevancy if that's needed for their job. Now, I give it to all my clients because you can't be an architect without it. And let's be fair, I don't think most people can do an MBA and then spend $10,000 on sales training and another $20,000 on presentation training and another $20,000, $30,000 on CXO relevance training. And like I had to, and companies paid for me. So that's why I teach all these things in our architect programs. Great question. I'm glad you asked. Chris, we can bring in the next one. Can a graduate of our generative AI architect program function as an enterprise architect? Not without training. And here's the reason why. If we train you to be an AI architect, we're training you to focus on the AI architectures to enhance business performance. If we're training you to be an enterprise architect, we're training you for a different architect career. So if I train somebody to be a neurosurgeon, they're going to be great at neurosurgery, but they're not going to know anything about dermatology, which is the skin and diseases of the skin. So no, what I would say as a person that takes our AI architect program should be able to get a job and work as an AI. A person that takes our enterprise architect program will be prepared to work as an enterprise architect. A person who takes a security architect program will be trained to work as a security architect, et cetera, et cetera. So we put 1,000 hours of specialized training into each one of these programs, and that's why we get our students good. Not all of our training programs have 1,000 hours yet, but a lot of them do. So this is why we really do these things. So what I can tell you is the biggest problem people make in their career is they try to do two different things at the same time. But let me show you why you can't be an enterprise architect and an AI architect at exactly the same time. And because the two jobs are actually going to cancel each other out. And let me give you an example. So I whiteboard for you this to let you really understand what we're really typically dealing with. Is over here, we've got the chief information officer. This is your IT organization. Your CIO is typically here. And you're typically going to have an enterprise architect or a chief technology officer or both of them, but it's basically the same role. So let's call this the enterprise architect. Now, underneath enterprise architecture, you know, what we're going to have here is we're going to have our various roles. So let's assume we're just dealing right now with a single data center. So we'll have the people that are in order to make this happen, we'll have some network architects that are doing network architecture. We're going to have security architects that are focused on the security architecture. We're going to have AI architects that are going to be focused on the AI architecture. We're going to have IAM architects that are going to be focused on the IAM. We're going to have big data architects that are going to be focusing on big data. So why do we do this? Because any one of these areas is too big to master on your own. So the enterprise architect and potentially the cloud architect could also be doing this role, is coordinating and facilitating all these specialist roles. So this role over here, the enterprise architect, is 90% business, sometimes 100% business. It could be up to 20% technical. But over here, now we've got all these specialty architects, and their job could be 50% technical, 60% technical, where this job is 80% technical, and it's different areas of expertise. So this is the reason why, you know, if you train to be a network architect, you'll be a network architect. Train to be a security architect. Now, to go from one architect role to another is very easy. It's just learning the addition skills. And that's why I always let our students, if they were going to add on another architecture bundle, we just let them add those modules and maybe do that throughout their career and be better at a reduced cost. But, you know, training you to be an AI architect, you'll be prepared to be an AI architect, and it wouldn't be fair to say otherwise. Rick Ecker, good day. You have recently achieved a CISSP and a CCSP. Good start. That's great. You were thinking of going for the Azure 500 security or the AWS security specialty. You're afraid your lack of background in Python, infrastructure as code, and PowerShell will hold you back. So, Rick Edward, we have to determine the career you want. If you want to be a security architect, Python is not one of your skills. PowerShell is not one of your skills, and infrastructure as code is not one of your career skills. Now, if you wanted to be a security engineer, then being able to configure firewalls would be a critical skill if you were working in network security. Or you could be working in data loss prevention as a security engineer, where you'd need to be familiar with configuring data loss prevention systems. So the real thing we need to do, Rick Edward, is determining the career you actually want and then configuring the skills. Now, I'm going to tell you, so Mark and I at one point decided to make an AWS Advanced Security Certification Bootcamp. And Rick, you may know that I have a free CCSP on this YouTube channel. I have a free CISM bootcamp on this YouTube channel, and my team will provide the links to these. And we're doing a free CCSK. Now, the reality is this. I literally prepared all of the content for an AWS Advanced Security. And I couldn't actually deliver this or even recommend it, and here's the reason why. While the CISSP focuses on an overview of all the things in security you might need to know, the AWS Advanced Security had almost no security in it. And it was all teaching you how you would configure a few of the AWS tools like Macie and WAF and Shield and other AWS stuff. And it was all about how to do it without telling you anything about security. Well, Rick Edward, here's the thing. I'm probably not going to use most of those AWS security things anyway, and here's the reason why. I'm going to have more enterprise-grade tools that are going to work in my multi-cloud architecture that I can use everywhere. So I might be using a next-generation firewall from Palo Alto as opposed to AWS WAF. I might be using a Palo Alto WAF or somebody else's WAF in addition instead of AWS WAF. Because I can do that in all of my clouds, and it's much more robust and has some behavioral detection, which means the technology can self-heal itself from attacks where I wouldn't get that, for example, from the AWS solution. So, that's why I haven't really taught the AWS Security Advanced. Now, Microsoft typically adds a little more technology. I'm considering whether to do that one for free. I really am, and I'm thinking about it. But those certifications wouldn't help you, for example, if you wanted to be an architect. But the AWS Advanced Security, if your goal was a security admin, meaning you were going to be the person that was going to configure the access control list and potentially configure some of the AWS security services and other security stuff, then it would be very valuable. So the key is we need to know. Not knowing how to code is not a problem as an architect. I'll tell you right now, I don't know how to code. I've never known how to code, and I've been an architect for 25 years, and it's never held me back because coding is not an architect skill. But other things are, and those are the things I've learned. So, Rick, if you want to tell us the career you want, we'd love to help you. But without the career you want, it is all it's all conjecture. Kind of like an airplane. Which airplane do you get on? You get on the airplane that gets you to your right destination. Mike, good to see you. What advice would I give a person in the UK about getting into the UK market from the UK? So, let's talk about that. Are you asking how to go to the UK from another country? Or are you asking if you're already working in the UK and you're already a UK citizen or permitted to work, how to work? So, if you're already working there, Mike, it's all about getting the right skills, showing the world that you have the right skills, and going on interviews and getting hired. If you're not in the UK, and I am not an immigration attorney by any stretch of the imagination, so I am unfamiliar with UK immigration things, I would say get an immigration attorney. And if you're trying to go from the UK, or if you're typically speaking to go to another country, you have to prove that you have something to offer to legally immigrate, unless you're being granted asylum. For example, you have a specific skill that you can serve help in that country. So maybe, Mike, maybe you've got a special skill, and I think you probably do, and you can use that for a reason to justify a visa, but I don't completely understand your question. So if you want to ask the question differently, I'd love to answer it. But as it stands now, getting into the job market from the UK, in the UK, I don't know what you really mean. Chris, let's go to the next one, and please feel free to ask questions. Oh, now I understand. What advice would you give a UK solutions architect looking to get into the US? Now, Mike, in this case, now I know how to answer it. So if you're in the UK and you hold a UK passport, Generally speaking, it's pretty easy to come to the US. Again, I am not an immigration attorney, but if you've got good skills, you can typically do so. The US always issues H-1B visas and other visas for people with specific work sets. And I've had to participate in this process throughout life because when it comes to hiring a good technology professional, Mike, a good one, there's nobody out there that can do it. It's so hard to hire someone. I mean, you could interview 100 people and they can all have the perfect resume, but if you ask them any of the things on the resume, they can't answer any of it. And you can't hire any of them. And to be fair, Mike, I mean, what happens is, somebody in HR makes up a job description for a job that's totally unrelated to the truth. And what are people doing? They're making up fake resumes. But unfortunately, me as a hiring manager, I can't hire anybody that lied to me. So I can't hire the majority of the people I even interview. And then when I actually interview people for, say, a cloud architect, and I ask someone, how they would evaluate a workload to see if it's better suited for a private cloud or a public cloud. And they say, what do you mean the cloud's for everything? And I say, oh, okay. Or so, it's very hard. Or if I say, what architecture frameworks do you do? And they say, I follow this framework, where that framework gives everybody in the entire world the same technology solution, regardless of their business problems. So with regard to that, it's another solution. It's so hard to find a solutions architect or a cloud architect. So I would just start applying for companies, but I would also ask an immigration attorney, but I don't think you'll have a hard time coming from the UK. UK, US, they usually typically get along pretty well with each other, and they're usually pretty friendly going back and forth work-wise. You're a security architect at a DPS and vendors. You speak to customers, great, talking about your product and reviewing their environment. You want to focus on architecture rather than engineering. You have asked to access lab tenants to prototype certain situations. Is that a bad idea, or should you focus on other areas? So for SPAR, if you want to be an architect, the last thing I ever want you to do is touching the technology. As soon as you do that, you just told your manager you're not an architect. You're now interested in engineering. So that's one thing. So first, Bar, I want you to focus more on business skills, more on your leadership skills, more on your executive presence. I want you to walk in and learn how to command a room. I want you to learn how to help the sales executive and the VP of sales close the $1 billion deal. That's the thing that takes an architecture seller from, say, $150,000 to $500,000 or $600,000 or more per year. So you don't want to be seen as the how-to person ever. And the thing is, the closer you are to the money, meaning the business, the CEO, the money, the more you'll be paid. And the closer you are to the tech, the least you'll be paid. So if you look at a director, for example, at a company like Cisco or Palo Alto, $550,000 is the average salary because of their business acumen. And I want you getting more of that. Don't touch the technology in the lab. Now, if there's a proof of concept, and as architects, we do lots of them, here's what I want you to do. I want you to lead the proof of concept. I want you to bring in some engineers for you. I want you to manage those engineers, bring them lunch, bring them drinks, do anything they need to be successful. At the same time, you interface with the client. And when things aren't working because you've got control and people see you and respect you, I want you to pick up that phone and I want you to bring in experts to make that proof of concept more successful anytime you need. So that's what I want you to do. And I'll tell you, in my first real solutions architect job, and I was hired, my first solutions architect job was as a principal solutions architect. I had about 1.5 years in technology before I moved into that. And I knew two things: to focus on one thing and focus on it real well, and to really focus on the business piece. So if you want to focus on architecture, don't touch the technology. If you want to focus on architecture, show the value of you. So if you're a security architect and you're talking risk mitigation, and you're talking changes to incident response procedures, and you're talking change management and risk control, and you're talking strategy, and you're discussing, having less events and less vulnerabilities discovered in the organization from the year, making them more efficient, how to automate some of those things. If you can get into that, that's where your value is. And you're not going to learn that by getting in the lab. You're going to learn that by diving deep into the technologies, knowing the technology's capabilities, knowing each technology's trade-off. For example, in the world right now, we need IAM right now. So if I have an IAM architect, I want them to understand all the types of IAM. Like, was it role-based? Is it attribute-based? Do we use, is it context-aware based? Now, what are all these individual systems that we have, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of each of these systems? And let's just take it to authentication, for example. What do we use for authentication? Do we use something you have, like a token? Do we use something you are, like the eye or the iris? If we use the eye, do we scan the iris or do we scan the retina? And what are the strengths and weaknesses of that? For example, if we scan the iris, and this is how you're going to, if we scan the iris, you don't have to be very close to the scanner, but it's not exactly the most accurate thing. If we scan the retina, you got to be this close to the scanner. Now, if we scan the retina, we're taking a picture of the retina, specifically the blood vessel pattern of the retina. Now, that means we can find out if a person has high blood pressure because of AV nicking, for example, or if they've had high cholesterol dyslipidemia from something called yellow spots in the retina called xanthemas. So, we're collecting medical information. If we use voice by comparison, can a person use AI to copy the voice? So, that's where I'd like you to dive deeper in. Dive deeper into what are the technologies that you have, what are the tools you can use, the strengths and weaknesses for these things, and then try to not touch the technology. This can add a substantial amount to your earnings because people will see you differently. I hope this helps. Please feel free to ask more. Please join us on one of our architecture webinars and pop in and ask a question live and free on Zoom. And we have one tomorrow, maybe 2 and 1 and 3. But please feel free, all of you, join our architecture webinar. It's free. We can talk about anything that you need to help you in your career. But I think that'll help you a lot. Try to focus on the architecture. Try to stay far away from that technology. Sir, you want to be a cloud DevOps engineer. Can I guide you and tell you how to start? So first thing I would suggest is be very careful of DevOps engineering. Understand that AI can code, AI can write a Terraform script, AI can write a Python script, AI can write a Bash shell script. So please understand that I expect probably half of the cloud engineers, software engineers, and DevOps engineers to lose their jobs in the next 5 years and not be rehired. But you'll see many more architecture jobs are coming because the architect job, leading people, meeting people, selling to people, cannot be replaced by AI. Now, I love engineers. So if you want to be an engineer, my recommendations are a sales engineer, or if you want to be an engineer, like a DevOps engineer, I need you to be one of the best in the world. I need you to be so good at DevOps that you're so much better than the rest of the competition because you're always going to have to be in the top percentage. I also encourage you to be involved. And when you're in the top percentage, you're going to be collaborating on projects, working in teams. So there's going to be a lot of communication. There's going to be a lot of leadership, and there's going to be a lot of facilitation and team management. So that's the secret to staying hired in engineering. Now, I am not a DevOps engineer, and I don't recommend DevOps engineering. Sandeep Das has a great DevOps engineering channel, and he's a great DevOps engineer. I highly recommend him, and I would ask him, and he has a whole channel dedicated to DevOps engineers. But I would make sure you understand that DevOps is a combination of software development and operations. So that means I typically want a good software developer in a DevOps role. And then I also want them to understand those DevOps tools and security operations, which is not my background. So I would say go to Sandeep Das. But I strongly recommend that if it's an engineering position, you consider the impact on AI of your future. And some architect engineering jobs are less susceptible. Security engineering is going to be safe for a long period of time because nobody knows security and we're in such a critical shortage. Anything related to code, and DevOps is related to code, be extra careful. And why is this? Because everybody was told learn to code. So there's no shortage of people that know how to code in the entire world, and AI is getting good at code. How good is it? Google writes 25% of all their code with AI. And you've heard other employers talk about laying off engineers with codes while still hiring solutions architects, sales engineers, and salespeople, because AI creates new job opportunities for architects, because new technology means we can not design new optimized business solutions. New technology creates new opportunities for sales reps. and sales engineer, because we can sell something and bring revenue to the company. So please think about that. Think if there's a way you can add sales or sales engineering to this goal. You'll earn more, you'll get treated with more respect, and you'll be much less layoff prone and resistant to AI. I kind of hope that helps. And do check out Sandeep Das. He's great. How familiar am I with sign-on bonuses when accepting job offers? Extraordinarily familiar. I've usually gotten some form of bonus, either in cash compensation or a large number of stock options or restricted stock units that are typically given in grams. So I've got familiarity with 100% of them. And I've been helping people do this for years, getting sign-on bonuses. Lots of times it happens. With the AI buzz around, do you think architect jobs will be eliminated? Never. Or limited in number? No. Architects are immune to AI. As architects, what AI skills will be required for the future itself, as it looks like a different field? Here's why architects cannot be replaced by technology. Now, AI can code. AI can configure. But AI can't do any of the things that architects do. And if you truly understand what architects do and you're actually doing real architecture, then you can't be replaced. So the cloud architecture process is we first start with the executive team. And we have to find the vision for the business, where the business wants to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20. And then we need to scope out the architecture. What is it we're trying to achieve with whatever changes we are? What's in scope? What's out of scope? Then the next thing we need to do as an architect is we need to figure out how that business operates, its business architecture. What does that organization look like? What are the key business processes that enables that organization to do things the way people actually work in that organization? What are the key value streams and competitive differentiators that business has? Because if we don't know any of that, then we don't know how to help them create an IT strategy to build their business performance. Then once we understand that and map that out, we've got to work with the clients to find more efficient ways for them to do things. And then after that, we've got to map out their technology structure. So we have to create an architecture team, bring in some engineers and other people to figure out what's going on in the systems, help document the documentation the companies don't have. And then when we understand what we have, we can compare the needs of what we have compared to the needs of what the technology company is looking for in the future. And that means we need to create a new architecture, which means we need to lead an architecture team of 15 to 50 people for the next 6 months to design this architecture. Now, after we design this architecture, we're going to have to work across the unit, the whole company, present to key stakeholders, and get their input, and then put it back into the architecture. We're going to have to create a governance structure. We're going to have to create a change management structure. We're going to assess the organization's people. Are they ready for change? Do they have the capability? What kind of people they hire? We'll write a statement of work, and then we go off to a new client or a new project. So what did you hear? Everything there is person to person, and that can't be done by AI, which is why AI is not impacted by layoffs related to AI, but engineering is. That's why for years I've advised people to get into AI. That's why we stopped selling our cloud engineering program. It was a great engineering program. We got a lot of engineers hired, and it was a profitable program to run. But guess what? I didn't want to train engineers for a job that I thought would be eliminated. But there's more and more architect opportunities every day by AI. So take advantage of it and learn AI. Now, what AI skills for architects are going to be the same AI skills for anyone else. How do you design a system to optimize that business performance? Now, as the AI architect, it'll be a little different. You'll still look at all the compute opportunities and storage, but now you'll need to know more about databases and training data and types of AI models, for example, that you could use, and how you would train the model, and those types of things that are related to it. How you would operate the model. What kind of model do you choose? What type of AI? Are you using AI or deep learning to mine through information? Are you using it to generate content? Do you want to replace people with virtual agents, or use agents to augment people with agentic AI? So again, all these architecture skills are about obtaining requirements and figuring out what's best for the client. They're exactly opposite of a cookie cutter framework, like a well-architected framework. They're all about, how do I create a custom solution for you? And AI, thankfully, can never do any of that. That's why I recommend architecture careers. And they won't be looking any different in the future. Is pre-sales engineering a good step before a cloud architect to get the business side before jumping into it? So, Christine, you're not going to get enough business experience in an engineering role to be an architect. So the best way to become an architect, Christine, is to train to be an architect. Jeffrey was a geospatial imaging person, nothing related to tech, and we got him his first job as a solutions architect for Kalian. Arun was working at Home Depot in a non-tech job, but he got his first job as a solutions architect at TELUS after we trained him. Now, Lenny was our video editor, but we trained him and he got hired as a solutions architect at Citrix, Arrow Electronics. Now, Delray Bat was an emergency medical technician who we trained, who right after us got hired as a cloud security architect. Jermaine was selling landscaping gear. He had a landscaping business, but he was hired as an enterprise architect directly after our training. Vladimir was a 24-year-old college student, but after our training, he was hired by North Highland. Noah was a social parker. So the key here is you can get your first job as an architect if you train to be an architect. Now, if you train to be a sales engineer, you probably need training after that role to be an architect because you're not going to get the business. So Christina, if you want to get the business skills, I recommend either getting an MBA program or taking a kind of architecture program like we have, where we teach you these skills. But I think it's unrealistic to think if I work for a nurse for 20 years, that's all of a sudden somebody's going to treat me as a doctor. Or if I've been an engineer for 20 years, like Pritapal, somebody would hire me to be an architect, but after we trained him, poof, he was hired as an enterprise architect. So I think the best way to be an architect is to train to be an architect. I think the best way to become a physician is to train to be a physician. I think the best way to become a lawyer is to go to law school, not work as a paralegal on the way to get you there. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. Plus the cloud, plus, there's really no benefit to you learning engineering, because it has no relation to what we do. The more time you focus on engineering, the more time you're going to have to unlearn the engineering, because engineering and architecture have a totally different mindset. And when I have people with a lot of engineering background, it's usually tough to get them to drop the engineering. And here's the difference. Engineering is related to what's in front of you. It's related to building, performance tuning, optimizing a piece of technology. Architecture is about business optimization. So it's a completely different focus. And that focus difference is so rough. And that focus difference is so rough that I can tell you from experience, someone like Jawad, who'd been a cloud engineer forever, took just as much time to be to train as an architect as Ivan, who was his first tech job. He took a little longer to take a cloud engineer getting him hired. So the sales engineer is a hybrid between an engineer and a sales rep. So it's good, but I'd rather just train to be an architect in the first place. You're going to get to your goals a lot faster. But I will tell you, the sales engineer is the closest next step. So if I wanted to be a sales engineer, I'd consider being a sales engineer, and maybe you like being a little more technical than the architect. And then when you wanted to leave the sales engineering role, you could do what I did, because I was a sales engineer. And when I wanted the architect role, what I did is I went to business school. I got some executive training. I got more business acumen training, more leadership training, changed my clothes, started wearing suits to work every day, tried to pretend that I didn't know as much about the technology, started talking about strategy, and then all of a sudden, we basically, I had the role. So I kind of hope that helps you. Is it not necessary to get hands-on experience in cloud before becoming a cloud architect? So let's talk about, let's say you built a whole bunch of things. And Farhad, I'll give you the example of the cloud engineers that I've had that have 10 years of experience, like Harsha. So if we look at all the things you need to do as an architect, Farhad: deliver presentations, 20% of their job, facilitate meetings, create an architecture team, lead an architecture team, give a presentation at a conference, give a presentation to the board, respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ, develop a business case, develop a risk mitigation plan, develop incident response procedures, develop statements of work, lead an architecture team. This is the job. And I promise you, if you know how to code, it's not going to help you get there. And I can tell you why someone like Harsha, who was a cloud engineer for 10 years, took 14 months. But Daniel Bosu, who didn't even graduate high school, was hired by AWS in 6. And it's because it's a different job. So of the 1,000 things an architect actually does, let's say that you had hands-on experience and that covered 4 of the 1,000 things. What about the other 996? So here's the thing, Farhad, if I got your name wrong, I apologize. It really doesn't matter what your background is. I promise you, none of it's going to be perfectly aligned unless you are already a physician or you're an attorney, which is pretty much the same job as the architect. And so based upon experience, Farhad, I'll tell you who's the easiest to get hired and who's the hardest to get hired. And I can get anybody hired if they do the right training. The first people to get hired are sales reps. They are people like Jermaine, who got his first job as an enterprise architect and skipped the whole cloud architect. Wallace Agana, who was also a sales rep, immediately got hired as an enterprise architect from JP Morgan Chase. And Al was a sales rep for Kimberly Clark, and he got his first job as a senior solutions architect at Deloitte. Now, why is this? Of the 1,000 skills that you need to be an architect, a salesperson probably has 30% of them already. They're usually good at presentations. They're usually good at obtaining requirements. They're usually good at facilitating and leading meetings. They usually have a good degree of business acumen. They're typically good at creating a team. They're typically good at getting resources when they need them and corralling resources. So let's say the sales rep has a greater percentage of the architect skills. Now, the sales rep, when they learn, they'll have the challenge with some of the technology, but they'll learn it and they'll be fine. Now, the next easiest people to get hired are actually healthcare people for architects. And why is it healthcare people? Well, in healthcare, we have to have a great degree of emotional intelligence. And in healthcare, we have to ask people questions. And we're experts at getting information out of people. And we're typically taught how to be emotionally intelligent and empathetic. So medical people like Camille, who became a senior architect as her first job, or even me, I was a principal solutions architect within 2 years. So the answer is there's that. So I'm not going to tell you that engineering is going to help you or going to hurt you. It's a completely different skill set. And how are you going to get experience in a job that's a different job? So let's say I had a flight attendant and I had a pilot. I've got one person who became a pilot because they went to flight school. And I have another person that was a flight attendant for 10 years and decided to be a pilot. You think being a flight attendant makes them any better as a pilot? Of course it doesn't, because it's somebody else's job. So we have to look at the skills and can you master those skills? And the key is you can. And everything one's learned in their life is good. But even the engineering people are not going to be prepared. So let's say we had a network engineer. Maybe that network engineer knows how to configure routers and switches and knows routing protocols, right, Fahad? But what won't they know? They won't know the data center, which means they typically won't know servers and serveralization and containers and container orchestration, functions as a service, application virtualization, the various block storage, object storage, file storage. They won't know databases, for example. They won't know application architecture patterns. They're not going to know disaster recovery strategies and business continuity strategies and how to build the business case. Why? Because they're going to be focused on their career. So any one career is only going to give you a degree of preparation. No, you don't need to be an architect before get an engineer before you become an architect. And I can give you a list and lists of people that have gotten their first job. Fahad, I even met a recent student in Manchester, Nafuli, who got his first tech job as a chief technology officer. There's no rules. You have to be good. Pablo, in the security domain, how critical is identity federation skills to be? Absolutely critical, and more critical. In today's world, if we actually look at security and security architecture, things are not what they used to be. We don't have the hard perimeters we have in the data center. Our applications are becoming more distributed across more clouds and other environments. So the only thing we have now is identity and access management, which means more advanced tools like context-aware IAM versus traditional IAM. It also means understanding identity federations and cloud access security brokers and not how to configure this. Because believe me, Pablo, everybody shows me they've configured things and I give them an architect interview when they fall apart in about a second and a half. I need people that understand how this works, the messaging that goes between these things. Because if I'm going to hire somebody, I don't care if they can just configure something. I can read and manually configure it. That's not what I'm worried about. My concern is, does the person know the implications of what they're doing? Those are the things that matter. So if somebody says, I configured an identity federation, I say, so. Now, if I talk to them about why did you use an identity federation? What was the logic that used on the federation? Who decided to trust to whom? When you federated with when you federated with something else, what were your architectural choices of whom to federate with, and why did you choose this solution? When it came to single sign-on, what were the architectural trade-offs you actually configured, and which single sign-on solution to use, and why did you choose it? That's architecture. So, and it can't be learned by configuring things. Hope that makes sense. Is it possible to work for more than one company as an architect at the same time? I keep getting asked this question, and it truly saddens me. And here's the reason it truly saddens me. So let's say that you got a job at AWS and you were working from home, and then you got a job at Azure. It is illegal for you to do both, and you could land yourself in prison. And here's the reason why. They're two publicly traded companies. And by working for two publicly traded companies, what you're really dealing with is, you're violating laws, because you could accidentally give information that is insider information to two different companies, and that would be a disaster. So in some cases, it's illegal. Now, TAO 3000, I've been having to fire people again and again and again, and all my favorite friends and managers are hiring people that are having two jobs because they're not doing their jobs. They're doing a horrible job, and then we're getting rid of them as part of a layoff, saying that we're low productivity individuals. So if I make a commitment to be paid a salary by an employer, I honor that commitment by putting 100% effort. I can do that and do a great job. So it's not ethical to work for more than one company, or legal in some cases. Now let's talk about what is ethical. It is ethical for you to work at one company from 9 to 5 and do a different job in the evening. It is also ethical to work for one company on Monday through Friday and do another job on Saturday and Sunday for a non-competitive company. That would also be considered ethical. But why would anybody need to do this? I mean, a good enterprise architect in 2005 was earning $250,000 a year then. And I know plenty that are earning $400,000 or $500,000 a year or more now, or even chief architects with $800,000 a year. Why would anyone risk destroying their name? Why would anyone risk destroying their reputation? And why wouldn't anyone want to build a good name, feel good about what they do, and earn a good living for their family? So that's my perspective on this concept of overemployment. I've sadly had to terminate people because of this, and employers are dealing with it every day. It's one of the reasons people are saying you have to come back to the office. Claude, hi, Mike. Are there opportunities for GCP cloud architects compared to AWS Azure? So, Claude, there's no opportunity for someone that only knows AWS. There's no opportunity for someone that only knows Azure, and there's no opportunity for someone that owns Google. 98% of enterprises and enterprises who hire us are all multi-cloud. 89% of all businesses are multi-cloud. So there are opportunities for cloud architects that know multi-cloud. Plenty of opportunities on Google, plenty of opportunities on Azure, plenty of opportunities on AWS. Doesn't matter where you work for. If you're a cloud architect, you're going to be designing all three, constantly. But you're not just going to be working with AWS, Azure, and Google. You're going to be working with Nutanix clouds. You're going to be OpenStack clouds, VMware clouds. You're going to be working with community clouds. And you're going to be working with co-location spaces. So if you truly learn the cloud, there'll be jobs for you. But if you only know a cloud provider, there'll never be a job for you as an architect, because nobody only uses a single cloud. So you can tell all the people that have had a career versus the people that are trying to promote courses when they say, oh, you don't need to go multi-cloud. All you need to know is AWS. There's no job for you because everybody's multi-cloud. And if you know the cloud, you know all cloud providers. If you know what a virtual machine is, you'll know all virtual machines, AWS EC2 instances, Azure virtual machines, Google Compute Engine instances, Oracle virtual machines, KVM virtual machines, QVMU virtual machines. They're all the same. If you understand object storage, it doesn't matter if it's Google's cloud storage or Azure's blobs or AWS S3, it's the same thing. And since we architects don't touch the technology, we're designing it. If you know the cloud, you know them all. So, Claude, don't learn how to drive a Toyota and not know how to drive a Mercedes and not know how to drive a Ford and not know how to drive a BMW and not know how to drive a Tesla and not know how to drive a Land Rover or a Jaguar. Learn how to drive a car and you'll be good for all of them. So there's opportunities for multi-cloud architects everywhere. And there's lots of opportunities to work for Google as well as an architect. Rasan, hello, you just came to learn about the cybersecurity field, but you are interested in the architectural aspect of it. If so, where would you start? Rasan, I would come to our webinar tomorrow and I will talk about it. The security architect job is phenomenal. And you can be plenty of people like Delroy, who I got hired as a security architect, or Michael in England, who I recently got hired as a security architect, or R, who went from being on TV to being a security architect. And I can give you a list of them. Thursday's webinar is going to be how to be a cloud architect. But I'll dive deep into security architecture, if you will. Security architecture is one of my favorite careers. I've done it for a long time, and I absolutely love it. So join us on Thursday, because we only have a few more minutes left. But join us tomorrow on Zoom, and I'll go over it, and we can have a conversation. And I'd be honored to talk to you and guide you. Bring in the next question. Would I explain the difference between a cloud consultant and a cloud solutions architect? A cloud consultant can mean anything from somebody that doesn't have a steady work to someone that's working as an architect. Cloud consultant is a term that could be anything and mean absolutely anything. So I have no idea what a cloud consultant is, because it could be a management consultant, it could be a sales rep, it could be an architect, it could be anything. It's just a dumping ground term that people use for anything. Consultant, some people call consulting lack of steady work. And then other people are doing more management and strategy consulting and advising businesses, which is great. And some people are consulting. So it depends what you mean by consulting, because it could be one of 10 different things. And a cloud solutions architect is like a cloud architect, but it's typically a more junior level role focused on a single cloud. If you want to really learn about the solutions architect role and the cloud architect role, join us on the free webinar tomorrow, and we'll go over the role, and we can have a face-to-face conversation too. Hope to see you there. Chris, let's bring in the next one. Tommy J, what is more valuable, financial acumen or business acumen, and why? Well, business acumen includes financial acumen. You don't have business acumen without financial acumen. So it depends on how to use it. You know, if you look through salary.com, salary.com, if they look at the average person with good, strong business acumen salary, it's $500,000 a year. Financial people with good, strong financial acumen earn good well as well. So either one of these can be $500,000 jobs or greater. So it really doesn't matter. Business acumen includes financial acumen. Now, if you have more than financial acumen, meaning financial expertise, and you've got one of those great quantitative abilities and the understanding in finance. For example, I knew PhD mathematicians that were writing algorithms that could do trading. Some of those people could make some incredible amount of money, but that was based upon their math acumen and combining that with finance. Finance acumen, business acumen, you'll be great. You'll be in totally good shape. Let's go to the next one, Chris. Cloud DevOps engineers won't lose jobs because currently need cloud infrastructure, automation, scaling to deploy. Sir, I could right now write a Terraform script that could deploy 30,000 virtual machines in the next 5 minutes without even knowing how to do anything. Go to ChatGPT, ask it to write a Terraform script to launch 50,000 EC2 instances, specify that what you want, CPU, DRAM, the amount of EBS volumes that you might want to use, and poof, it'll be done. So it's up to you. You can understand and what the technology can do, or you can go down this path. But the best engineers, like I said, the top 50%, they will make it. But it's up to you how you plan your career. I'm the one that's speaking to the executives. I've spoken to the executives throughout my career. I know where they're going, and I know what the CEOs are saying. So it's up to you. But the best engineers will always be needed. How hard could it be for a project manager to pivot into an architect role? I have a friend named G-Day, and a friend started down the architecture path. And if he would have continued it, he'd be an architect right now. I've had a lot of students that were cloud architects. I'm sorry, project managers that have become architects. Gladys is the one that just comes to my mind recently. I spoke to her about many. G-Day, if you were the G-Day that I know that I started to work with for 2 or 3 months and then disappeared, and because you took on big cloud projects, come back to class. Your membership's still good, and we'll get you through. If you're a different G-Day by comparison, we'd love to work with you, but you can definitely go from project manager to architect role. And many of those skills, like leading a project, creating statements of work, being able to manage tasks, a lot of those will come back to help you. In our opinion, do I think product managers will be replaced by AI? No. I can't replace a product manager by AI, because if we really understand what product managers are doing, they're going out to the clients to see what the client actually wants. Then they're interfacing with, say, engineering and whatever people are involved to see what's possible, what could be built. Then they have to come up with the product requirements and, what should be made for the people based upon what the customers want after prioritization of resources. This is a very human task. So anything related to where you're dealing with people, and you have to deal with people all day long in your job, not going to be replaced. Because a project manager, I can think of someone at Cisco, the project manager responsible for, let's say, one of the voice products. I'll bring that project manager with me in a $50 billion deal, because they know that product better than anyone. And they can talk about features and product release cycles. And I could even bring their technical marketing engineer that's going to be an expert on the product to support the project manager, which is more of the business role. Those roles, good. Those technical marketing engineers, again, good, because they're going with the product manager. They're an expert on the various products. They're selling it. They're presenting at conferences, so they're safe too. It's only the people that stand behind the screens and code or write blogs all day, those kind of things, that are really in trouble. Some customer service reps, not good customer service reps, because AI can't compete with that. But sometimes you call a help desk or a customer service rep, and by the time you're done talking to that person, you wish you could toss the phone away because they gave you such bad service. They're in danger. But the more human to human your contact is, the safer you are. That's a safe role, and it should be a safe role for the foreseeable future. How long is our cloud architect training? Well, our cloud architect training is until you're hired. Look, I'm not a boot camp, and I would never run a boot camp. Now, I'll tell you that on average, a student that we have that says works full time and can devote 20 hours a week to it, 8 to 12 months is about what it takes by the time I get somebody, teach them all they need to learn, and they're hired in general in a good economy. In a great economy, they typically get hires faster because employers become less selective. In a challenging economy, it typically takes a little longer because employers become more selective because there's more competition. So those things, but about 8 to 12 months. Now, we let all of our content online. We keep updating, and students are allowed to access that until they're hired. We've got a live Slack community, and students are allowed to access that until they're hired, even if it takes years because they went part-time or only worked a few hours per week. And realistically speaking, after that, the live classes are for a year, and if people needed a little longer in the live classes, we probably wouldn't even say anything to them, and we generally don't, because we just want our students hired. So for the most part, it's until you're hired, and because we want everybody that takes our program hired. I think there was another part of that question. I'm not sure if I saw it. If not, let's go to the next one. Is there a possibility of having more flexible installment plans or scholarships? Unfortunately, Fahad, we pretty much run this program at our cost or very close to our cost, whatever it takes for me to maintain staff, For example, we have 2 PhD business school professors. We have multiple architects that are all functioning architects with decades of experience that are teaching in our program. And we're doing live training. So this is a very expensive program to run. So I wish there was an opportunity to do it cheaper. Believe me, if it was, I would. You can tell we give away as much as we can for free, and what we charge for can literally add 6 figures or more to someone's salary and truly be life-changing. So what we're charging is a very small perspective, 1 or 2 days pay for the average graduate we have. Great questions, Fahad. Is there a difference between a business architect and an enterprise architect, and which one is better in terms of salary and in terms of working with business strategy? So a business architect focuses on the 3 main focuses of any business, which are people, processes, and technology. An enterprise architect focuses on the 3 main components of business: people, processes, and technology, and making sure we get the most out of them. Enterprise architecture comprises business architecture and technology architecture. So the blurring of the role is where things get a little icky. So a business architect is typically working as a management and strategy consultant, and I've done this as well. You may see them at Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, and their management and strategy consulting, focusing on crafting strategies or better understanding the business environment so the organization can have a better strategy to help that organization compete more effectively. Now, the enterprise architect is still focused on the business strategy, but maybe they're typically a little less focused on the business strategy than the strategy consultant. But at the same time, the enterprise architect now also has an area of expertise. Now, the management consultant may have to carry a sales quota and may have to sell a certain amount of things as part of their architecture role, selling management consulting. The architect assists the salespeople in selling their things. So you don't have to worry about the quota as an enterprise architect. You do have to focus on being effective in your sales techniques to be bringing on business, but it's a little less stressful like that. The enterprise architect is a very strategic role, and because it marries business and technology, that's a real sweet spot in terms of salary. But plenty of management consultants earn plenty of money. The net effect is you can earn $250,000, $500,000, or $1 million in either of these roles if you're really good at what you do. So either one's fine. It's what do you like more? Understand you can probably be an enterprise architect without an MBA, but in most cases, to be a strategy consultant or a business architect, you typically have to have an MBA first, because that's kind of the required. You're going to go in there and to consult the business, and they have to prove that you have the pedigree of, say, advanced degrees in business to be able to do that. I kind of hope this actually helps. Okay, well, I think I've answered everyone's questions today. So tomorrow, join us on our completely free How to Become an Architect webinar. We're going to focus on the cloud architect, but look, if you've got AI architect questions, I'll answer them. Security architect questions, I'll answer them. Enterprise architecture questions, I'll ask them. After we go through our architecture discussion, you can ask me any question you want. If you think you're ready for a cloud architect job, I'll ask you 2 or 3 interview questions. And I can tell you right there, are you ready, or what do you need to learn? If you're an architect and nobody's reaching out to you, and after our presentation, you want to ask a question about your LinkedIn profile, I'll go over it. So we really want to do anything we can at Go Cloud Careers to help your cloud architect, enterprise architect, AI architect, security architect, or any other architecture career. Love to help you with other careers, but these are our areas of expertise. So hope to see you tomorrow. Please sign up. We're going to be running a free CCSK boot camp. I'll have my team drop that link too. We're going to start it next week. I get to get geeky on cybersecurity for a week or 2 with some strong intro-level cloud security training, which is always fun for me. I love security. I love cloud. I love enterprise architecture. It's my life's work, and I just love it all. So I hope that was a good time. If you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a like. Maybe subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to assist you in your architecture career. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.